allpointstv.com. And we're glad that all of you are out there in the viewership and listenership. We had I remember we had a guest come in, and I told him that to look into the camera when people can see you in your full glory. And he said to see me, he knew we were doing audio. We didn't know we were also doing. We had a video of the program, and he did not see the. We had these small cameras. We were, just getting started. We had these small cameras in here, and he didn't think we had camera. And he thought this was like a radio show because we called ourselves, let's see, flinttalkradio.com, I think we called it at that time. And he thought this was a radio program. And I said, why don't you look in the camera and tell the audience what your message, your final words are in your message that you want to bring for the day. And he looked there and said, trying to find the camera. Where's the camera? And the camera's right there sitting on the shelf over there. Because we had a small camera. We've grown from that point. We're now, we don't call ourselves that studio anymore. We call ourselves allpointstv.com, TV. And so you automatically assume that there's something to do with the visual as well as the audio. And so we're now the allpointstv.com. And I keep wanting to revert back to the roots because that was my beginning point here at the studio. But we're grown up now, and we are a much larger studio, and our technicians are doing some marvelous things here, making me look good. I don't know how they're able to do that, but they seem like they're able to do it every week. And people think that when we come in here and sit in these chairs, we have the show. They don't see that if the technician's not doing their job. I have to say this on almost every program because I want to make sure we give a shout out to the ones who are actually making this program and other programs here at allpointstv.com. It doesn't work without the persons in the studio that are behind the scenes. And don't you ever think that it's really just those persons like myself in front of the cameras, because the people that's doing this, the arduous task, the unsung part of the work, they're the ones that you don't see on camera. And I'm thankful for them because I know I can't do what I got to do when I come here to the studio if they're not doing what they have to do. I titled this program, The Forgotten Man. And I wanted that in quotation marks because I didn't want anybody to think that I was saying that the women who just were entitled to right to vote in the 1920s, I don't want you to think that we're excluding women that have been forgotten. But I put that in quotation marks because I'm actually quoting from the title of a book written by one of my favorite authors. I don't think she gets enough credit, but Amity Shlaes is the author that I got this title from, The Forgotten Man. And this author, I kind of look at some of the seriousness of authors by who they put on TV, because the ones that's actually serious and are not bringing up the system's understanding of what ought to be said before the public, because they do have these little licensed bodies that they put out there, and they put them out there as a licensed body in order to control what they say and control the guests they have on. And you never see these people. I keep looking to see, when am I going to see, her name is Amity, Amity Shlaes, Shlaes. Have you ever seen her on TV? I've never seen her on television. And the person that they've gotten off there now because they couldn't control her, you never see Ann Coulter on TV anymore. Not when she stood Bill Maher more down and made her comment on his program. I think that was like the end of her TV appearances, because I haven't seen her on TV since that time period when she said out of the blue, when nobody else believed it. They asked the panel, who do they think would be the next president of the United States? And Ann Coulter said Donald Trump. And I told you last week, people were looking around, what did she just say? This woman, well, I think it's a woman from it must have been from CNN. These non-believers, and they couldn't believe that she said that. They threw out at each other trying to get validation. Is that what she said? They were trying to see if that's what they heard. She heard it better. She couldn't believe that, so she wanted to validate it with other persons around, and they were all looking stunned. So that's what she said. They all looking around. Did she say that? And then once it happened, later on, I mean, that was early on in 2016, and nobody gave this guy a shot. He was going up against Hillary Clinton, and she was a seasoned politician, been in Washington, Hollywood. Washington's another Hollywood, and she'd been in Hollywood, Washington, D.C. I think Washington, D.C. is a Hollywood on the East Coast, and you have the actual Hollywood on the West Coast, because you have a lot of because you have a lot of actors in Washington too, and they all from what I see, they're all acting. And if you find one that's in Washington that is authentic and not putting on a mask and talking before the cameras without a mask on and without masking themselves, masking how they really feel, and so on, you got somebody that's something new or rare in the nation's capital. Because these politicians, I can tell you right now, these politicians are masked. And if you don't go behind what they say, or if you take them on sight unseen and you think that's them, because that's the way they import themselves on television, if you think that's really them and don't see the disguise that they're wearing, then you're making a big mistake. But you never see Amity Shlaes. I've never seen her on television. And she is worthy based on her writings, because this is a major writer. I don't think I've ever seen, now think about it, I hadn't thought to say this before coming on air, but I don't think I've ever seen Ron Chernoff on television.
Actually, I did. I think years ago. I think it might have been. I think it might have been Rush Limbaugh I saw him on.
Okay.
Back on
Yeah.
or mentioned or something like that. But that one. Yeah, I have. I remember seeing him.
That would be unusual if he was on Rush Limbaugh's program, because Rush Limbaugh is noted for, this man was something as the media figure. This man never wanted to guest on this program because he can carry the whole 3 hours.
Maybe you just mentioned, but I do remember the name, and I mean, but I'm going to look that up and do a Google search.
Yeah, I like to hear. I like to know if he. I don't know if he would be on. I'm trying to think what Rush Limbaugh is. I don't think Rush. He would be in the domain of what Rush Limbaugh would talk about, but Rush was more or less of a Lone Ranger type of commentator. He came on talking about with half his brains tied behind his back, and that was pretty much true. And I mean, I couldn't deny that he's a smart man, and some of his proteges out here, Mark Levine admits he's one of the proteges of Rush Limbaugh, and that man was magnificent in terms of his being able to carry a show in total for 3 hours, and you never felt that the time was being wasted. And I never thought that there was never enough time for him to get through all things he wanted to talk about, because he was just such a polymath in his understanding of things. I had a lot of, I used to tune that program in like it was religion from 12 to 3. And the station that aired this program, that station now is a music station. They're taking down all these conservative stations in Genesee County. We're a liberal city, so.
By the way, Amity actually is associated with the Acton University, as well as she's also connected to the American Enterprise Institute. And I know Rush used to talk about that.
Yeah,
the American Enterprise. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I would like to know. I'd like to know if she has ever been. I don't watch a lot of television. I'm very targeted when I do watch it, because I don't have a lot of time to be watching these events. Even my sport, I do like sports, but I have to watch sports where it's either the finals, or I watch boxing, because boxing can be the champion can be decided in they in the ring, if it goes 12 rounds, it's 36 minutes. But then with the intermissions in between rounds, within an hour, you'll have the decision of who the champion is, who won the bout, and so on the same hour. And I watch that because I like it because it's the immediacy of the result. But you talking about sitting down for the whole season and find out who the winner is going to be, I don't have that kind of time. But I had to admire, I had a lot of admiration for Limbo. But if he had on there, John said, Ron Chernow, that would be like in his ballpark or what he would talk about. But Rush was kind of like a guardian of his own space because this man could carry the whole show 3 hours and never did. I never felt like. I mean, at the end of it, it would kind of wind down a little bit, but the 3 hours, this man could just carry the show all by himself.
Oh, by the way, I'm looking up more of Amity here, and she's all over the place. National Review. She's at American Academy in Berlin. There's there's
Yeah.
articles about her. So
And,
yep,
and what she writes.
she's an economist. I know that.
Yeah, she has written some work. I mean, I consider her to be one of the major writers out there, and certainly one of the main researchers out there. And this book that she wrote called "The Forgotten Man," I think this. I have the smaller text version of it. This is the large. This is large print. I wanted to get the large print version so that I won't need my glasses when I'm reading from a book. I have both this version, and this is the. I very seldom buy two books of the same type, but this one is large print for those persons that like myself that they have to.
It must have impressed you as frugal you are about purchasing books. You always wait till to go down in price. You talk about them and you pretty much got them all memorized before you get them. Yeah, so it must impress you to get two versions of it.
Yeah, because that's the kind of writer she is. I have to tell you this too. I have my library is downstairs in the basement. Around the walls of I mean,
Your library is your basement.
my library is my basement. But when I buy a book and I have a copy of it already and I buy another copy, that's saying something. I've done that a couple of times. I did it with this marvelous writer, and then I did it again with Ralph David Abernathy, and I did it because I bought Abernathy's book when it had gone down, but it was in the hardback cover of the book. And as you know, Ralph Abernathy was the right-hand man of Dr. Martin Luther King, and wherever King went to jail, then Abernathy went there with him, not Jesse Jackson. And by the way, Jesse Jackson wasn't even a part of the civil rights movement. That's another thing you need to know about that. But when Ralph Abernathy wrote his book, and the walls came tumbling down, I knew that book was going to create a lot of hot spots because of the things that were revealed by Ralph Abernathy. And I knew it was not going to go over well with those who were trying to import themselves into the civil rights movement and claim battles that were fought that they were not there for. And Jesse Jackson was one of them. So I knew when I read his book, I said, wow, that's not going to go over very well. And when the softback book came out, I wanted to get Ralph Abernathy's reaction to those that responded to the original book he put out. And I wanted to get that book to document what he said about in response to those that responded to his original publication. And I have both the hardback and the softback for that reason. But I very seldom will get two books the same type because number one, I'm too cheap to do it. But if the other book has some information that will justify it, or in this case here, the large print allows me to take it with me and don't have to have my glasses when I refer to it. But I want to read from this book called The Forgotten Man. And I want to add on to what I was saying a little bit last week when I was saying that I was trying to say something I said something last week nobody's ever said before. And I didn't come here to say that, but I did say last week that the word Supreme Court and the Supreme part is capitalized. You know, it's capitalized everywhere but in the Constitution. And they keep saying Supreme Court capital letters because I've been trying to trace down, you know, where that came from. Was it deliberately intended to put out a false notion of what was intended by writing that into the Constitution of the United States in Article 3? Or was that just an oversight? I mean, people are capitalizing because of oversight. And I wanted to research that, and I don't think it's an I don't think it's oversight. I think it's intended. As I wrote today on Facebook, is intended, to me, is intended, because I think that the intention at the very beginning of the founding of the country was to overthrow the Constitution of the United States. And I am going to be writing to document that in some of my future posts on Facebook, because I am now saying here some of the fights that had to go on at the very beginning of the country's history, when the country was truly great at its founding point. But you know, something that happened on the way to, let's see, what's the word? What were we on the way to? On the way to the Forever Time. On the way there, one of the exit lanes, we got off the route and deviated from where we were intended to go somewhere else, and we are now somewhere else that was not intended. I'm now looking and researching at that point who those culprits were, and I'm looking at the intentionality of it, trying to find out how much intention was in back of it, and just how many was it just doing things, and then these unintended consequences had a tumbling effect, and we've tumbled down into 2025, where now everything is off kilter. And I want to look at the intentionalities in back of it, and that's what I'm doing research on right now. I'll be writing about this in the immediate future. But I want people to be aware of this writer, because this is no lightweight writer, Amity Shlaes, Shlaes. And her writings are she writes, Chernow writes like this. This guy writes in volumes. I don't think that I read a book by Chernow that is not 700 pages. And let's see, what is this book? This book has 600 and some odd, some 600, close to 675, somewhere around there. These are volumes that are written, and her book on Coolidge is like that. So when you see these persons, and I look at another thing here too. I look at when programs are serious, and there are very few of them on TV that are serious, by the way. It's very difficult to find a serious program on television. And that includes Mark Levine's program. That's probably the most serious. That's the more serious than most of the others. But I cannot consider that to be a serious program by the guests he brings on there. You see, what they're doing is that when they want to, when program wants to entertain, when I don't say they want to, but when they're entertaining programs, they're infomercials kind of programs. They have information, but they also have to worry about the viewership. So they are, what this one guy does admit to, he calls it edutainment. I think he calls it because it's a combination of educating and then being attentive to the audience you're trying to bring in. So a lot of it's entertainment. And when I look at Mark Levine, for example, as one of the culprits, is that when you start having on your program people like Newt Gingrich and these politicians on there, you got Lindsey Graham. He's a constant on there. I don't know what I'm going to learn from Lindsey Graham. I don't know what Lindsey Graham. I don't know what Lindsey Graham can learn from Lindsey Graham. But when you start bringing on guests like that, then I know you're not a serious program. And you bring on Newt Gingrich constantly, and you bring on Lindsey Graham. That's a constant. I don't take it seriously, and even when you bring on Alan Dershowitz.
By the way, we do have a comment here.
Okay, fine.
Patrick Harper says, "Hello, George and team. Great to hear your wise words on this fine day." So
yeah, tell him things like that. You know, I need all the comments I can get, John, because I get one comment every 10, 15 years. But we're gonna stay the course. We're not this Johnny come lately kind of thing. But you know, look, if you're serious, and very few of them are serious, I tell you, they're not serious, because when you bring guests on that are not at the top of their game, you bring Alan Dershowitz on there. I know you think he's at the top of his game. Alan Dershowitz is a give me a break. They think Alan Dershowitz, I hear him give all these accolades and things like that. And I'm saying, okay, fine. You brought Alan and Dershowitz on there. You bring him on there every time somebody has to talk about the Constitution, as if this man knows anything about it. And he doesn't. Alan Dershowitz is a fraud. And he's a lawyer, but what are lawyers? What do you think lawyers are? What do you think? Let me ask that question. Let me stop for a minute. Let me ask that question. What do you think lawyers are? Change a few letters in there and shorten the words from lawyer to liars. That's who they are. And people have to understand these lawyers, of which Alan Dershowitz is one. They give him too much credit on TV.
Did you ever see the movie Liar Liar with Jim Carrey?
No, I didn't see it.
Yeah, his character's kids at school, and they said asking the professions or the careers of their parents. And he goes, the kid says, my dad's a liar. She goes, don't you mean a lawyer? And the kid just like shrugs, like it's one of the same. It's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, you know?
Yeah, that's like that one they had on TV when they had that guy, the teacher asked the students what they wanted to grow up to be, and they said, he said, I want to be like my father. So she said, well, your father, and what does he do? And he said, he's a loafer. And she said, she did a Johnny, zip it. And she didn't know he's talking about a person that's works at the bread place, and he's loafing the bread, John. So he's a loafer. She thought he was talking about one of these guys out there, lottery and that kind of thing. But no, you don't see the ones. Look, I judge a lot of these programs. I know you're going to say I'm overreaching, but I judge a lot of these programs by who they have on as a guest. I judge the sincerity by who they have on. And after Bill Maher had Ann Coulter on there, and she said what she said in that program early in 2016 that Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States, and they all looking around like she had come down from Mars. And is she from the Earth or what country? And they couldn't believe she did that. And I don't think they had Ann Coulter back on. They didn't have her back on. The woman was bringing too much information that was out of the box, and they don't like those kind of person because they consider them to be unhinged. But I don't think I've ever seen. And I like to hear some people that have other testimonies to say about her present on TV, but I never see it on television. Maybe but I don't watch a whole lot of TV there. That's also true. But I think if she's on these information programs, these infomercial programs, I think I would have seen her, because I try to watch those. If I do watch programs, I watch those, and those that I consider serious. Now you're gonna watch if you're gonna be on MSNBC and CNN and MSNBC. Did I say MSNBC? Yeah, I need to start off with that one. And also these PBS programs, you might get that by me by that. But I don't think they'll have I don't think they'll have Amity Shlaes on there, and I don't think they're going to have Ann Coulter on there. So when I'm going to read from this book by Amity Shlaes, this woman is a major voice. And I want to read what she says. I'm gonna just, I think it's just 2 paragraphs here. Yep, 2 paragraphs I'm going to read. So you're not going to be having to listen to the whole chapter. But I want to read what she says here about the forgotten man, because it might not be who you think of when you think about the forgotten man. She says, I'm not sure where it's located in the big print. I'm not sure where it is in small print. In the large print, it's on page 19. And it says, about half a century before the Depression, so let's say about 50 years before 1929, you do the math. A Yale philosopher named William Graham Sumner penned a lecture against the progressives of his day and in defense of classical liberalism. The lecture eventually became an essay titled The Forgotten Man. Applying his own elegant algebra of politics, Sumner warned that well-intentioned social progressives often coerced unwitting average citizens into funding dubious social projects, unwittingly co-opting their sovereignty, doing this against their will, behind their back, but in front of their face. How do you do that, by the way? You do it subliminally. You do it where they don't know it's being done, but you do it in front of their face, but behind their back at the same time. And she goes on to say, according to what this Yale professor, this is before the university taken over by the progressives, quote, as soon as person A observes something which seems to him to be wrong. So observing A, he's observing this situation, and to him, this seems to be wrong and needs correction, from which X is suffering. So A spies it out. X is the person who is victimized by it. A talks it over with B. Now, let me come to the meat of this, because the forgotten man is something very different than what you would think when you read this this book. You start off reading this book. So now we got B involved in it. A saw a problem that's affecting X, and A talked over with B to solve X's problem. And do we see that going on anywhere in the United States today? Okay. Their law always proposed to determine what A, B, and C shall do for X. Now, where does C come in? A saw a problem happen to X, talked to B about it, and now they're saying, A and B are discussing what A, B, and C are going to do about it. So who is C? C is us. C is all the people in the United States. That's what I was writing about today in my post when I was talking about. It's a 3-part series. I'm finishing up the 3rd part tomorrow, and I was asking, who let these people in this country, and who gave them permission to do it? Tomorrow's post is, who let the dogs in the house? That's what I put as a precursor to the topic I'm writing about tomorrow on Facebook, and I'm raising it because I want to know who let the dogs in the house. But I should have asked. I didn't add this to it, but I'll do it tomorrow when I write about it. Tomorrow morning when I get up and write about it, because I should also have said who let the dogs in the house and why. Why do those progressives do that? And so here she's saying, according to Graham, the professor at Yale University, back 50 years before the Depression, what A, B, and C shall do for X. A, B, and C now, not just A and B. They're discussing it, but they want to know what A, B, and C are going to do for X. Now, where does C come from? Well, A and B wrote C into it. There was nothing wrong. This is Slade saying this. There was nothing wrong with A and B helping X. I wouldn't have a problem with it. What was wrong was the law and the indenturing now. You know, you had indentured service, the indenturing, the roping of the other party, the third party, against that party's will and without his understanding, and some of it without his knowledge, and roping him into the loop of an understanding agreement that A and B made, but C is now roped into it. That forgotten man, the person that is the title of the book, The Forgotten Man, forgotten in the sense that his opinion of whether he want to be involved in it was not, in fact, even considered. Listen carefully to this last part here. Indenturing C to the cause that A and B have decided. That's their cause, but C is A, B, and B have gotten together here, and C has been roped into a cause that A and B decided upon behind C's back, and without C's permission, and without C's understanding, and even without his knowledge. That's you know how these guys be pumping their chest. Where did homeboy? How did homeboy get involved in that? Can I ask that question while I'm about to get mad? How did I get involved in that? How did my pockets get turned inside out? I wasn't there to get my permission about it. But as a taxpayer, neither were you. Listen to this part right here. What's wrong was the law and the indenturing of C to A and B's cause. A and B, you can go and you want to be charitable. You want to do the sum bonum good for the most people, and so on and so forth. I have no problem with that with your money. But you cannot tell me you're being charitable with my money. Because that's not charity. It's another word. There's no C word. These are C words here. You're not being charitable because what you're doing with my money, this is my not only my view of it, It should be the view of all taxpayers, because this is not charitable contribution. This is confiscation. And these politicians want us to believe that they can make us charitable against our will, and we should in fact, keep our mouth closed. I have to tell you something, little secret. There was a person that wrote on Facebook what happened to Charlie Kirk. And they were saying that there was a message behind his assassination. In fact, we've had that person that wrote that. We've had him in the studio a couple of times. He ran for a couple of offices outside of the Genesee County area. And we've supported his candidacy because he's an independent thinker. I happened to catch, when I saw his name attached to it, was on Facebook. I had to pay attention to it because I have so much respect for his independence of thought. And there are not too many persons in that train of thought where you are independent of all these voices out here, and you can get through the maze and arrive at your own conclusion based upon your own research, your own understanding, not relying on your wetting your finger and putting it in the air and finding out, does this meet the wind test? So I stopped, and it said that Charlie Kirk was assassinated because there was a message in back of the assassination. That message was, do not question, do not ask questions, be quiet, don't open a can of worms, all that part of it. And that pretty much is the way it is. But it's not just Charlie Kirk. I heard that same assessment. Sometimes you lose things in comedy. I heard it from the comedy that used to do the hollering. He'd come down and start hollering, and that. He was a great comedian. I can't think of what's his name, but he said that what do you call people like Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and name some of the others. He said you call them target, because they put a target on their back, because you start getting out here and raising questions and making people think, and that is problematical, because there are a lot of people out here. If people think I was talking about it last week. If you think these politicians want you out here educated and thinking and things like that, if you think that's what they want, if they got thinkers, they can't control you. They don't want you out here thinking. And they don't want you out here getting in information that they can't control the information you're getting. That's why they do this licensing of these bodies. And that's why they have to pay attention to it, because the FCC has to regulate whether or not they give them a license the following year. So now we got to understand how the system operates. And when they put these people on TV, and that includes Alan Dershowitz, he's not going to say anything, because Alan Dershowitz is not a constitutional scholar. This man's a fraud. And people, I say that out in public, nothing to be abusive, but to tell the truth about this man. This man has gotten a lot of accolades out here that he does not deserve, because they think they think he's a great lawyer. They thought Johnny Cochran was a great lawyer when he got OJ off, and OJ murdered 2 people. Chris Rock was saying, Chris Rock, the comedian, was saying with Johnny Cochran, you get to go home. Yeah, you get to go home. But what kind of person is that guy? O.J. Simpson killed 2 people and got away with it. But people didn't see in the background of that. Guess who was in the background? in case the lawyers at the table, the ones in the forefront, you just see the one in the background. But who's in the background? Alan Dershowitz was in the background. And you didn't see that because they didn't need him, because there was no appeal to be made, because Janet Cochran got up there in front of a predominantly black jury and preached and sounded like their Baptist preacher, and said things in a sermonizing voice. If the glove doesn't fit, and that's because of that guy Chris, gonna put the they had anticipated he's gonna mess up. They already anticipated that, and then this guy gonna tell OJ to put the glove on. And OJ holding the glove and saying to the jury, it doesn't fit. And then they're looking for an out anyway. They don't want to convict him, and they're looking for an out, and that's the out that they took. They act like they were actually considering that. They already made up their mind. They're gonna get back at the Los Angeles Police Department because they were mad at them because of Rodney King. That's what that was about. But I'm talking about the person in the background you never saw here, and that was Alan Dershowitz. Because what they were looking with, if they could not win it in the forefront, they're gonna win it. If they can't get you in the wash and get you in the rinse. And so what they were looking to do there with O.J. Simpson was to, if they couldn't get him off in the forefront by going through the trial, then they could make it expensive to retry him by going and appealing it based upon a comedy of errors that are made in the trial, because they make a lot of errors when they're trying the case. And what Alan Dershowitz was doing in the background was watching it so that he could become the appellate attorney. And that man has played that role almost to a science. Because you study, you just simply make a claim of due process. It is very difficult to cross all your T's and dot all your I's in due process. And there's some error that you're going to make that denies due process, which comes in two forms. And you have to be 100% not to make some error. And there's Dershowitz in the background watching that. That's what this man does. I don't have respect for him, because he says a lot more than what he is. He's not a constitutional scholar. And I was done with him when he said, after having tried cases, after having been a defense attorney in the first impeachment of Donald Trump, he wasn't there for the second one, but the first he was there. And for him to say that in order to bring about impeachment, must have treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors for you to bring about impeachment. After he said that, I was finished with him, because no constitutional scholar would say that. If you said to me, I don't hear anything else you have to say, because that's so far off the mark that you cannot be credited thereafter for anything you say about the Constitution, because that's fundamental. If that's Constitution 101. The impeachment process is to me 101 Constitution. And if anybody says you have to have treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors in order to bring about impeachment, and this man is defending the president who's been impeached, and that was not treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors of the president. It just made up some stuff. But the trial is not about the stuff you made up. The trial is that which is now required for dismissal and removal. And removal requires what Alan Dershowitz says that you have to have for impeachment. Some people think impeachment is removal. It's not a removal. And I think these presidents like Trump and others need to stop being so fearful of impeachment. Because because if you're going to correct it, let me tell you this, folks, this is Moss speaking. If you're going to correct this problem in this country, you're going to have some people impeached. I didn't say you have to have people removed, because impeachment is not removal. Removal is found as an Article 2 provision of the Constitution of the United States. That's removal. Impeachment is an Article 1 proposition. Alan Dershowitz, do you agree with that? Because if you do agree with that, then you need to go back on TV and correct yourself on what you said about you need to have treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors to bring about impeachment, because that's an Article 1 provision. The Article 2 provision to remove the president, that's an Article 2 provision. And I said, when I heard him say that on TV, I was taping the program. I had to play it back because I could not believe that was said, and I played it back a couple of times to just make sure my auditory nerves were not deceiving me. I was doing that thing they did to Ann Coulter. What was that? Did he say that? Or checking it? Nobody else was in the room. I couldn't check with anybody else. I had to play it back a couple of times to re-listen to it, because you can't say that. And no constitutional scholar would say that. Not even in private, they would not say it. But he keeps saying it too. And that's another thing, that he has not gone back and had enough respect for the document to go back and read it to see if that would be true. Don't keep saying that stuff over and over again and get it wrong every time. And you got Ted Cruz in Texas. He's saying it, and he's wrong too. He's one of Dershowitz says he's one of his top students. Well, you didn't have that. If that's the top of the line, if Ted Cruz is the top of the line, you got some problems. I can show you my top of the line. It ain't Ted Cruz, and it certainly wouldn't be. Not that he's pretending he would. I don't know if. I guess he's a lawyer. South Carolina, I guess this guy is a graduate. Most of them in Congress are lawyers. That's one of the stepping stones into lawyers they become in Washington, because all of them up there lying. I don't believe in I don't believe in anything they say, because nothing they say can be taken at face value unless you check it out with a couple of authorities. And they try not to get pinned down on anything factual, because once you talk about facts, then you can go and see, well, let's see if that would be true. They try to talk in opinions, because as Monahan said, you have the right to your own opinion, but not to your own set of facts. And you can say anything in opinion, and who could say you're wrong for having an opinion? But I must tell you that looping us into this corridor that they have agreed upon, and they've agreed to have our money put into the kitty of decisions they made, that does not fly other than through the coercive power of government, because without that, they cannot, in fact, get away with that. Because charity is something that you do out of the spirit of your charitable impulse. You want to do something charitable for someone else. And I will tell you that I am very charitable to people that have some meaning in my own life. But I'm not altruistic, because those that have no meaning in my life, or in the lives of a larger concern, I just don't think that you can sell the idea that is in fact being charitable. That you rope somebody into something that they're not a part of, in agreement with. You made the decision, so then you pay for it. If you let these people in the country Do you scholars agree with me on this point? If you let people into the country, you don't put them on my welfare dime. You bring them in the country, then you put them in your basement of your house, and you pay for it. You don't bring them in here and then put them on the taxpayer's dime and have him paying for it through these welfare programs. They come here and get on these welfare programs that you created to make me more charitable than I want to be to our people that I don't even know and who I don't even agree with. I don't agree with them coming in here and hollering 5 times a day through these microphones, megaphones in Dearborn, like they're doing, getting ready to do in New York. And they're doing it in London. Go to London. You can't even hear. If you think you're going to hear something about the Magna Carta, you're going to go in London. There's a mosque on every corner. They didn't put a mosque. They didn't expand the Middle East into Europe. And now Europe is talking about exporting them out of there after they brought them in here, and they're now tearing up with Sharia law, they're tearing up the countries they're in. They want to now try to export them out. Try that.
Notice that the liberals want us to say, if you have objection, it's Islamophobia, but they have a problem with Christians having churches where they have bells ringing, which are far less intrusive than all that caterwauling, right? And another thing is too, okay, how can you reconcile having gay and transgender rights and all this stuff and gay marriage in a society now? It's increasingly people who are intolerant. How can you reconcile and fuse all that together? You can't.
Yeah, John, you're killing me. I tell you my response is to that. These people don't even want to be called names anymore. Okay, let me tell you this little point we had as a child. Sticks and stones. I come from that. So John, you ever heard that one? Sticks and stones may break my bones.
Yeah, that's what I grew up. I mean, I wasn't grew up growing. I was made fun of a lot of kids, and my parents they said you got to have tough skin, thick skin, and names aren't going to kill you. No, not. Oh my God, that's hate speech. Oh,
we've gotten so far away from things that grounded us into another reality that kept us from getting so far base like we are right now in this country.
Look at 18-year-olds in the 1940s who were facing guns of going after the Nazis and not the Nazis or the Japanese or whatever. Now it's like I got to have a safe space because that guy thinks mean. I mean, he called me a bad name.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we've gotten very soft, but John, the people that they made us soft by deliberately. See, this is the kind of, when they say programs. This is programmatic. Just like they have this programmatic obsolescence in this country. Those they got these light bulbs now. You think they just invented these light bulbs that can last 9 and 10 years. They always have that. They said the filament back there with Lewis Latimer, who put Edison did the light bulb. But Lewis Latimer put the filament in that bulb. And you'll go up there at the Smithsonian Institute and you'll see where they say he kept the light on. Yeah, he kept the light on. But the filament was programmatically set up so they can sell more light bulbs. But now that landfills have become an issue, then they extended the life of the bulbs now, just like they do the bottles. The bottles went up from 2 cents to 10 cents because you bring it back at 10, maybe at 2, you throw it away. So you do certain things here that are programmatic. You don't see the programming going on, but it's programmatic. And there's programmatic things that are taking place that you don't see that they are putting you into without your permission. I'm just telling you this. These things are done behind your back, but in front of your face at the same time. And these things they put on TV, don't always accept everything they put on television. Don't just assume because they put these scholars on TV that these are the scholars you ought to be listening to. Alan Dershowitz and all the rest of these he's a scholar in his lane. And why is he a scholar in his lane? Because you have to give him credit for having attacked the body of information. But there are a lot of people that don't have any degrees that have done that. Harold Cruz, a guy they called, he's deceased now, Dr. Sebi, who knew a lot about herbs and things like that. And they call him a doctor, but he's not lettered. We have to get away from this idea if you letter, you can say anything and get away with it, because sometimes you letter and you're out there saying things you couldn't be saying. You should not be saying. And Alan Dershowitz is one of them. I'm just still going to tell you that. I don't listen to, look, I don't fall over my chair and listen to Alan Dershowitz, because Alan Dershowitz is not what he says he is. Not only was he the person in the background in the O.J. Simpson trial, I will tell you this. Alan Dershowitz was in the background of the Epstein case. He apologizes for it now, but when Epstein was originally found actionable, some action they was doing on that island, and they went to trial, they were going to take this man off the street, but Alan Dershowitz found some errors in it and appealed it, and through the appellate process got it reversed, because the due process, you see, due process is procedural as well as, see, it's the procedural aspect is where they get you, because you can go and say, well, it's due process, they do A, B, and C. But, if you don't do the procedural aspect to it, and there's procedural things that you did wrong where you might have some things done in reverse. I had a case where one of the many times where I was in the classroom, I was so controversial, I was just teaching the facts. And I didn't care who the facts hit, and they didn't like that, because they were on me and telling me what I was going to teach in my classroom, and I was telling them not me. And I told the superintendent of schools out there, because he cleared his throat when I said that. He said, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to teach this, this, and this in your classroom, and you're going to do this Monday. I said, not me. And I said, before that get taught in my classroom, you'll teach it. And before I teach it, I'll see you in court. I'm reading more books than he ever would have imagined. He's going to tell me what I'm going to teach in a department that I have at that point, I had a bachelor plus some other hours degree. I was on my way to some other degrees, but I was at that point, a third year instructor. Idealistic as we are when we come out of college. We want to change the world. We think we have enough grounding point now. We've learned enough. We're out here to change the world. We are very idealistic. I knew I was. And I was out here to change the world. I understand Kirk, by the way, because I understand that's what Kirk was trying to do. Kirk didn't even go, he didn't last in junior college. Kirk dropped out of junior college, didn't need it. This man was on fire. And he was out there to change the world. He had a target on his back. And that's what that guy was writing about. I won't call the guy's name out, but he's been in the studio a couple of times. I don't want to put a target on him, but he was out here. He was in a studio a couple of times, running for office and that. I have a lot of respect for him. But look, if you're out here and you're out here giving information out, you got a target on your back. I don't care on what level you're doing it. Somebody's watching you, and somebody's disturbed by it, and they're trying to stir up people that will, in fact, do things that out of their disturbance will, in fact, act upon it. That's what they're trying to do. And I will tell you, these are some very dangerous times, because we've gotten so far away from what we ought to be doing in this country, because we've gotten so far away from the framers. And this looping of C into what A and B have decided, that's a going proposition in this country. It happens all the time. To finish up then, what is said about this, Slade says what was wrong was the law and the indenturing of C to the cause. Now, what cause? The cause A and B had themselves gotten together to decide something got to be done for X's position. We can't have this. This is bad. We got to change that. And C was the forgotten man, the man who paid, the man who never is even thought of. When they bring the people in the country, they're not thinking about the taxpayers who are paying for this. You're not considering that. how much out of your pocket, how much out of your children's pocket, your grandchildren's pocket, how much of this debt they created because of this madness, which will never be paid off, by the way. They've indentured the servants that are here now, and they've indentured them generationally. And that's charity. The forgotten man, not only the ones who are here now, but those that are forgotten in generations yet to come. They've done that, and they want to talk about charity. It's a confiscation of sovereignty. It's a confiscation of the right to being independent. And what they have done here in this country, and it's unforgivable, is place the entire country in bondage. And John, you're saying we're wrapping up, right? The whole country's in bondage. And the forgotten man needs to be read to understand how we got here. Next week, we're going to be talking about the roles that are being played in this looping of people in the country and how they're getting away with it with this immigration they're doing right now. And this one I'm writing about in part 3. Tomorrow will be my third part of that. But I want to talk about it on the air as well. And we'll talk about that next week. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.